go ahead and get started right now. Now, before we kind of hit the record button, let's do a quick sound check. If you can hear me, if the sound quality is A-OK, please let me know. Here's what I want you to do. Go to the question box on your GoToWebinar control panel right now and let me know if you can hear me. Awesome. Good to see some familiar faces. Lots of new faces as well. Thanks for being here again, folks. We're loud and clear, 2 thumbs up. Excellent. So Dan, I'm going to request for you to hit the record button, and we are now live, everyone. Let's just do some quick introductions. My name is Amar Sheth. I basically operate the customer success team here at Sales for Life. We're a global authority on this topic of social and digital selling, and we help sales teams generate more pipeline and revenue by applying and using social in their day-to-day sales process. I'm going to kick it over to my co-panelist today, Kim Babcock. Kim, over to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Amar. My name is Kim Babcock. I am Director of Customer Engagement at Trapit, which is part of Scribble Live. So we actually joined the Scribble Live family earlier this year. And my role is working, it actually crosses a number of functions at the organization, but primarily it's about working with our customers to build successful social selling, employee advocacies, and content and social listening programs to enable sales teams to really, I would say, engage the modern buyer. And, you know, for me, listening, our topic today is actually one of my favorite topics because I strongly believe the foundation for all modern marketing and sales programs starts with listening. It starts with listening to your buyers, listening to your customers, listening to your competitors and your industry, your market, to find those key insights and buying signals to deepen engagement. So I'm really excited about this topic today and having this conversation with everyone. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. And folks, I'm super excited as well. I'm going to do something a little bit unconventional. And Kim, we didn't talk about doing this earlier, but hey, let's have some fun, right? So folks, here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to the question box and let me know, are you conducting social listening right now? Maybe you're a sales leader. Do you have it in your sales process to tell your reps to use social listening to generate insights so that you can have more contextual, more relevant conversations? If you're a salesperson, are you doing this? Tell me details as well. If you feel comfortable, how deep are you going? What tools are you using? How are you getting the insights? How are you presenting them? Share anything and all that you can and that you're willing to. I'll keep everyone's name kind of anonymous as I read some of these comments just to better understand what everyone's doing. So let's give everyone about 10, 15 seconds, but please send in your answers. Go to the question box and let me know. Are you currently using social listening and social insights to have better customer conversations? All right, so there are a stream of answers just pouring in. And basically, Kim, we have a handful of yeses, but I'm willing to bet there's about 85 to 95% no's here. Okay, yeah. So folks, you're in for a treat, okay? You're in for a treat here. And Kim, why don't we rock and roll? We'll go to the next slide and kind of kick the conversation off.
Excellent. I am in control of the slides here, so give me a moment. Excellent. I'm not going to spend too much time on the title slide here, but you know, it's really the power of social listening and how it can ignite sales and buyer engagement. And that's what we want to talk about today, the role that social listening can play in engaging with your buyers. So just really to just cover the agenda that we're going to go through today, we're going to touch a little bit on the social and digital age, which is the reality that we're all operating in. And I always think it's important to pause and really think about that context in our roles, especially in the context of the current state of B2B sales. We'll talk about the new rules of engagement in that context, and then the role that social listening can play to really empower you to be successful and really embrace the new rules of engagement. So that's really the what and the how of social listening, and then really open up our conversation and have answer any questions that you might have.
Yeah, and folks, keep the questions coming in. You all know how to use the question box now. I'll be moderating. I'll be taking all the questions. So Kim, please.
Awesome. Yes, absolutely. I meant to reinforce that as well. So just, pausing and, in some ways, these statements here are saying the obvious, what we already know, but I actually think it helps to ground our conversation as we talk about the social and digital age. We know that social networks, social platforms, and digital interaction are now established as absolutely persistent and participatory. They're really a two-way dialogue and layer in our daily lives, whether it's personally or professionally. It's just merged to become how we do business, how we engage with others, how we communicate. And being a part of communities, conversations, and social networks with real-time and relevant content is actually necessary to be able to demonstrate your expertise and build credibility and trust. To do that, social listening and what I would even broader to content listening and digital content is absolutely key. And it's key to being authentic and adding value and being able to engage with insights. So we're going to talk about social listening in that context and, really bringing things to life in the context of the buyer's journey. Today's buyers, we know absolutely in this social and digital age, they're doing their research. They will do 70% of their purchase investigation before engaging with the brand. So it's challenging. To make sure that we're part of that conversation, and that's really critical.
And Kim, I wanted to add to this, if I may, because
please.
I'm going to share a really personal story with some of you. I've shared this on earlier webinars in the Modern Sales series, so some of you may have heard it, but let me kind of just restate it here for everyone else. There's a question coming in from Stephen here, actually, that kind of dovetails directly into this slide and into my answer. And Stephen asked, does this have relevance in a typical B2C e-commerce environment? The answer is absolutely. So Stephen and the rest of the gang here, I think we have literally entered a brand new era in buying. There's a social selling influencer, her name is Jill Rowley, who's kind of summed this up into a beautiful soundbite, which I couldn't agree with more. And it goes like this, that the buyer has changed more. So this is you and I, everyone. We as the buyers have changed more in the last 10 years than we have in the last 100. Let me give you a quick example of how this slide and the data here affected me personally. So 4 years ago, my wife and I bought a house. By the way, I'm in Toronto, Canada. We bought a house and we said we need to now go furnish the house. Long story short, guess where we did all of our research? Well, of course, online, right? I mean, that's the obvious answer. But we basically went to Alibaba. And long story short, we sourced factories, had conversations, had detailed Skype video chats, got quotes, checked out products virtually. And it was such a seamless process that my wife and I then went physically to China for 10 days and purchased everything for our house, right? So I'm talking about the furniture, I'm talking about everything in my kitchen, everything. That is a radical example, and some of you are probably laughing and chuckling as I say this, and believe me, I'm crazy enough to do that, but that goes to show you that this is now having massive implications. If you're a salesperson or a sales leader on the call today, ask yourself this question. What is preventing your buyer from not doing this to you, right? So how do you add value in this environment? Because the good old face-to-face still matters, but there is a tremendous journey that's done without you. And it's scary, but Kim, if you can just forward to one further slide, I want to give you reassurance and comfort. Okay, so Corporate Visions actually did a massive study on this. And what they found out that if you're a salesperson today and you're adding value and insight in the early stages of that research, okay, so imagine those people that found me. Imagine those people nurturing me. Imagine those people educating me in my buying journey. Well, those salespeople now have almost a 3 out of 4 chance of winning the deal. So when salespeople typically hear, oh my gosh, this buying journey is taking over and I can't add insight, it's actually the diametric opposite, okay? It means that you as a salesperson just have to do a few things differently.
Yeah.
Would you agree? What are your thoughts?
I couldn't agree more, Amar. And it's interesting because I've spent more time in the buyer seat than working at a vendor. And I can think of so many examples, both in the B2B and in the B2C context. When you talk about, choosing that sales rep that was the first to add value and insight. I was working with a B2B sales rep for a technology solution, and we actually had a solution in place. So it was going to be a long buying journey. We knew we were challenged with that. But it was the sales rep that was consistently sharing with me engaging content, useful content, bringing insights. Were actually helping me to build the business case to remove our current vendor and choose a new one. And that was a 2+ year process. But it was that sales rep that was adding value and bringing that insight, that when it came to make the decision and even go through a traditional RFP process, our decision was made. Absolutely. And it's interesting you bring up the real estate example. I choosing a real estate agent, I was following a real estate agent for 2 years on Facebook before choosing to do business with them. But they were constantly top of mind with sharing information about neighborhoods and home buying process, that type of thing. So some of the more complex processes, it's absolutely critical to have those insights and that value that's going to help you to make that decision. And that helps to build that credibility and trust. And the only way that you're able to do that is if you are tapped in and you are listening and you know what's important, what's going on in the industry, what's important to your buyers. So I couldn't agree more.
There's a comment here coming in also, Kim. Basically, a couple of folks are actually agreeing with our talk track, and they're actually giving examples of this, that this has indeed worked for them. So yeah, folks, if you're listening, your peers on the bridge are seeing this in real life. There's an example here of someone listening on LinkedIn, using that insight to then get connected, which landed into the first sales meeting, which 6 months later allowed the sales process to continue and land in a sale. So
beautiful.
Yeah, great examples, folks. Keep sharing that with us.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful. Amazing. So let's talk about new rules of engagement in this context. And I want to jump into the what and the how pretty quickly. But just to give context, we talk about the social and digital age. We talk about, how buyers are doing their research, but they're also looking for new insights and to be educated. And I put that in the context of there's so much information available. So many things are changing rapidly in every industry. We talk about digital transformation, new technologies. So it's more important than ever in the context of this is building your online personal brand. It's more important than ever in sales to be able to, and in modern sales, to be able to really stand out and demonstrate your credibility. And in that context, we talk about demonstrating it, but you also need to build it. And how do you stay on top of all of the things that are changing in your industry? Technology is shifting, your competitors are moving quickly, your buyers are changing in terms of what their priorities are, or they're changing roles, and the dynamics within a buying group are rapidly changing. So, you need to be able to stay on top to build and demonstrate your expertise. We've touched on the fact that people are looking for new insights and to be educated, but they're also looking for that authenticity and personalization. And that consistency to stay top of mind. But that, that human element to be able to engage authentically is so critical. So what we want to do today is talk about, social listening in the context of these rules of engagement. Anything to add there, Amar?
No, I think you nailed it. And I think personal branding is something that's probably talked about a lot. I think here, if you've attended previous webinars or if you've just read about social selling online, I'm sure you've heard a lot of talk about personal branding. And there's a lot of questions on, well, where do I start? So, what I like to remind people of is this. You got to start with your presence, right? And that's a very nice kind of marketing way of saying you got to make your profiles look right. and start with LinkedIn. Right, it's the big one. It's kind of the easiest one to tackle, and not in terms of complexity. There are a few moving pieces there, but think of it this way: when you go to your LinkedIn profile, what are you actually saying about yourself? So are you sounding like a salesperson, right? And I'll give everyone some data here. So 92% of sales leaders, so by the way, if you're a sales leader listening to this, please don't get caught with this, all right? Just food for thought. 92% of sales leaders' LinkedIn profiles still sound like the Me Too show, right? And that's a very nice, polite, kind way of saying you've made the conversation about you and not your customers. By the way, not your fault. Please don't think that that's me finger pointing, because when you joined LinkedIn, even LinkedIn told you to make your profile that way, right? They told you to make it sound like your resume. Salespeople, you're very much looking and sounding the same because most of you are just copying your leaders, again, to no fault of your own. So I want to challenge everyone. What do you need to say? And what I'm going to argue and press for here is this: you need to educate. Make the conversation completely about your customer. All right, so I see a couple of folks on the bridge today, and I'm going to pick on you, okay, by name. So Don and Doug, okay? We've got two people on the line named Don and Doug. So Don and Doug, if you go to your profiles today, what are people actually going to see? What are they going to read? Are they going there to get educated, or are they going there to find out that maybe you were 120% of plan last year? So food for thought, right? Like if you were to go to my profile and you found out I was 120% of plan last year, does that make sense to you? Does that matter to you? So on this slide, the new rules of engagement, there's a lot to do, but I think by building your personal brand, you can really start to show expertise because people are looking for those insights. So that's what I would have to say.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more.
Awesome.
So, and I don't know if I want to spend too much time on this, but it sort of sets the stage well, Amar. And there's so many people that have used this analogy before, but I actually think it's so telling. Mastering the networking event in the social and digital age. Let's pause and think about going to an offline and in real life networking event. It actually starts with listening. You're not going to attend a network event with prospective buyers, whether it's a conference or, a meetup, with other folks in your industry or the buyers you're trying to engage with. You're going to do your research ahead of time. You're going to know who's attending. You're going to understand who the key influencers are. And when you first walk into that event, you're going to start by listening. And look for opportunities to contribute to the conversation and add value and share insights. You're not going to barge in and immediately hand out your business card and start to talk about your product, because people are just going to tune out. They're not going to listen to you. They're not going to understand, where you fit into the conversation. You might even physically see some backs turned. And I'm stating the obvious in that context, but translate that into the social and digital age. There's even opportunities to read others' communication styles. You read body language at an in-person networking event. Look at digital body language and how people are interacting and acting online. If someone isn't as active, you're not going to, start to toss questions at them on social networks. You're going to spend a little bit more time listening and look for offline opportunities to have conversations. So that listening to be able to respond appropriately and find ways to share insights. None of us want to be that person at that networking event that just barges in and talks all about yourself. I think that translates into the business world as well as our personal lives on a regular basis. So.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more there, Kim. And just some additional food for thought for everyone on the line that, the networking meeting or the networking event example is really apt here. It's appropriate because you would never go to this event and not try to contextualize and make sense of it.
Absolutely.
So we're setting the stage for you here, right? We're going to start to get into some tacticals here, but just think about this logically. And I think one of the biggest gaps that I continue to hear in the market from salespeople is, well, how do I make sense of this? There's really not much to make sense of, right? And I mean that with all due respect, because I think the same things that we're doing in the real world, i.e. the offline world, IRL, all those same things are applying into the digital world as well, okay? So I hope that sets the stage for you, and we're gonna start to get into some practical.
Excellent. So yeah, we want to break into the what and how of social listening with some real practical examples, some real life ones. And before we jump in, I do actually want to define social listening. It's a term that gets thrown around a lot. A lot of brands do social listening in order to engage from a customer service perspective. I just want to broaden our definition a little bit in the context of modern sales. Listening on social media platforms is absolutely an important element. But what we're talking about today is much broader. It's about tapping into influencers and who's influencing your buyers, and listening to what they have to say, and what conversations they're participating in. But also that rich content online that's available. There's so many blogs, so many articles, rich white papers, and point of view on different topics. And that content is absolutely key to driving your social listening effort. So beyond just social content, but rich, relevant, quality content. Social media conversations, we touched on those. Relevant online communities, whether it's LinkedIn groups or other online communities where your buyers are going to listen and learn. There's tremendous opportunity, as well as your own networks. Are so powerful and rich in terms of the people that you want to be able to tap into. So I just wanted to set the stage with it's really a broader definition of social listening. Anything that you would add there, Amar?
Yeah, there's a great question here from James, and James is asking, well, how do you do this in a complex cycle where you have to have constant expert-to-expert interaction with potential buyers? And I think James, and for the rest of the team listening, I think Kim's hitting it right on the head, right? Which is you've got to provide that information digitally. So there's two ways to do this, right? Because the number one question, and some people are already asking on the question box here, is this: that how do you do this at scale? Right? So Kim and I are going to talk about the scale question in a moment, but ultimately, folks, you've got to get this information to your hands in an automated way.
Right?
Absolutely. So of course, there's LinkedIn, right? The simple answer is just follow the right people on LinkedIn, go to their feeds, grab and yank information, and share at will. But there are tools out there. There's avenues for you to just get the right bite-sized information that's very relevant to a specific account or to a specific buyer. And then when that kind of flag gets hit, it'll alert you, and you take that and you share it.
Yeah.
So that's one of the biggest, meatiest piece of advice that I would give everyone, that if you're wondering, how do I do this at scale? You've got to start evaluating ways to use technology, because you as a human being can only scale your time so much. It's believed that most of us as sellers spend on average 100 to 120 minutes a day selling. That's it. So if our job is sales and we're spending less than 2 hours a day selling, where's the rest of the time going? And I submit to you that a lot of it's going towards just administrivia. Yeah. So consider that, right?
Yeah, and I think it's really about how can you do this at scale. So we're going to talk about examples here. We're not going to get into too much detail on the tool set. Happy to continue to have those conversations. So let's jump in with the examples, because I think it can really bring to life. And as you bring up that question, to me, it's about always on social listening. So it's that consistent listening that's happening to stay on top of what's going on around a number of different topics. You're going to see some overlap in terms of some of the ways, the what and the how that we're talking about, but it is just about consistently building it into your day, your week, your processes. So let's talk about building and growing your authority and credibility. So how do you stay on top of industry trends to become that subject matter expert through social and digital listening? So here are a few examples. It's staying on top of industry-related content, and it's about saving or building that web search. And again, lots of tools and technology to support this. But you want to stay on top of what's important in your industry that you're selling into, but also what's important in for your customers, your buyers. So maybe the vertical. So I've got two examples here. If you're selling digital transformation consulting or tools or technology into the healthcare industry, staying up to date with the latest innovations and the conversations that are happening around healthcare and digital transformation. Another example I use here is financial services and artificial intelligence. You want to be finding that rich, relevant content that you are consuming. So you're doing that listening and reading, but able to bring those insights to your buyers digitally, but also face to face. So, as much as this can help you build your brand online and that you're sharing this content, but you're also consuming it and being able to use these insights in the conversations that you're having, the emails that you're sending. But this piece is really key to building and as well as demonstrating your capability. The one piece I'd also had, this is about reading what your buyers are reading. It's a way to stay more relevant, but it's also a way to be able to bring those new insights and, be able to break through and find that niche content with those really important insights that can help break through the noise for your buyers and that, echo chamber of information that we can all fall into and bring out that real nugget of new insight that can help move the dial forward and add value in your conversations and really help your buyers.
I love this slide, Kim, because folks, I want you to start thinking of this visually like layers to an onion, right? So imagine that at the core of the onion is your buyer. Outside that immediate sphere is their company. Outside of that company sphere is the industry. And sitting on top of the entire industry are thought leaders, influencers, people that basically affect change, right? We have to start looking at this as salespeople from that kind of onion or layered perspective, because if you can kind of crack the code on getting these insights, and to Kim's point, reading what your customers and buyers are reading, you win. Now, if you're wondering, Amar, that's a pretty bold statement. I remind you once again that of the 100 plus, 130 plus people on this bridge right now, the majority of you said, no, you're not doing this, right? So 85 to 95% of you are not doing this. What is the chance of you actually winning the deal if you just start to practice a little bit of this? Right? So I want to plant that seed in your mind and just kind of give you inspiration that every single time, and by the way, I have people on the bridge right now saying, Amar, get to the meat of it. Show me something I don't already know. I'm going to push a little and challenge you. Are you already doing this? And if so, how successful are you doing this? Right? Because if you're not sharing information, really, what value are you adding? So, Kim, food for thought and back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Kim, are you there?
I am. I'm sorry. I just popped it on mute for a sneeze, if I can be honest. Thank you. So yeah, the next piece that really builds off of that, finding that rich content, what's being talked about within your industry and the verticals you're selling into, is following industry-related hashtags. So you may or may not be an active Twitter user. You're certainly probably hearing lots of debate these days on the value and the future of Twitter, but there's absolutely rich value to be had. And I encourage you to try, if you're not using it, and start with listening. Find the hashtags that are relevant to your industry, your buyers, and you can easily create saved searches in Twitter on key hashtags, so you're actively listening and see what conversations are happening and who's having those conversations. I think you see a lot of publications about who's influencing CIOs these days, who's influencing the CMOs. Find those influencers and listen to them, and I think that is so powerful to continue to gain insights, but also know what they're talking about. But you also can see who's engaging with their content, so a great way to see opportunity.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. I like this slide a lot, especially because I think influencers, folks, if you're sitting on top of this entire chain, think about the power you have to persuade people and to get them to think. And I think ultimately the chance for salespeople here, if I can be specific, is influencers and thought leaders are typically months, weeks at worst, or months and months at best ahead of the curve. They're talking about trends so into the future. And this is the perfect type of content to share with early stage prospects to start showing you have that business acumen and understanding as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks, Amar. So let's talk about social listening in the context of account-based, and whether it's account-based marketing, account-based selling. We also hear the term account-based everything these days. I think what's key here is it is so important to ensure you are using social listening to deepen relationships with those key accounts. And it's not just about the accounts and their business, but the key decision makers, and really understanding all of them, the dynamic, and social listening, content listening are so key. And even if it's accounts that become those existing customers that you're looking to grow and deepen, staying on top of what's important to them. In the context of what you're selling, but also in the context of their overall business and their business priorities. It is so important. So just, covering sort of three steps, and we'll walk through a little bit of that in the next slide with some examples, is, setting up for social listening success. Start with your listening. So find all the key stakeholders on social. Find them on LinkedIn, Twitter, two platforms, LinkedIn for sure, and you may or may not find them on Twitter. You may also find them on Facebook and Instagram, but I think you want to be really, really cognizant of how they're using each platform. Context is critical. Finding your buyer on Instagram and starting to engage with them when that's where they share their family photos may not be the best approach, but it may offer up some insights as to what that individual is passionate about. But so finding them and setting up some social listening. You can create Twitter lists and web searches on both the brand, the stakeholders, and their business and their industry. And that's when I'd say you pause and you listen for the intelligence to get those insights that you can engage them more effectively and personalize that engagement. And that's what becomes so powerful when you take an account-based social listening into your overall efforts.
I want to ask everyone a question, so please go back to your question box and just put in your answer there. How many of you have set up Twitter lists for your top 5 or 10 target accounts? Just give me a quick yes or no on the question box. Are you using Twitter lists as a feature to gather intelligence on what's going on with a person or an account? Yeah, so once again, the answers are pouring in.
Yep.
And I see overwhelming are no.
Mm-hmm.
I see three yeses and a sea of about 90 no's.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't surprise me. I mean, I think the opportunity is there and it's one to tap into. And I think it's just one tactic as well.
Exactly.
And, I'll move forward into just a few examples here. I'll just talk through these. So let's say you were looking to sell a marketing solution to Dell. Create that, search on the CMO at Dell. So you're staying up to date with important to their marketing organization. You get some insights, get to know, if things are shifting or changing. Another example here is GoDaddy as a brand. So let's say that was an account you're looking to target and engage with. You may want to understand a brand beyond just if you were selling them a marketing solution and know what's important to them. And if you're following, a brand like GoDaddy, it's so important, diversity in technology and net neutrality, all topics that are super important to them as a brand, both their CEO and overall. So the content can give you so many important insights to enrichen the conversations that you're having, and also opportunity to really add insights. Here's an example of a Twitter list. I used to work in the marketing area of TD Bank, and being able to build that list of some of the key influencers and decision makers, and the brand Twitter handles, it's just going to give you those constant flow of insights, and you're going to get a little bit of personal, a little bit of business in there, and start to gain those insights. May not be relevant for all the accounts that you're looking to target, but you may find those opportunities, and when you do, those nuggets will be really, really valuable.
I want to share, if I can, two examples here, right? So we have clients all across the world, and one of our client salespeople who's located in Cleveland and specifically sells to insurance companies. And he only handles 12 accounts. So he's given at the start of the year, he's given this list of 12 customers or prospects, or to our customers, 10 are net new prospects. He has a bit of a base run rate revenue. He has to go chase and close the rest to meet his number for the year. And he's constantly cold calling CIOs all day, every day, right? That's his shtick. And there's no response, right? Like he's lobbing in cold calls. There's gatekeepers at every turn. He's emailing. And this guy's crafty, been in the industry for 20 years. Very simply, by the way, the CIO he's targeting, I'm even going to make this a little more complex for everybody, okay? The CIO he's targeting doesn't even have a LinkedIn profile. Like that is the basic truth of some people that you are going to target. There's no other way to slice, okay? So what he does is he follows influencers, and once he finds out the kind of upcoming trends, guess what he did? And we actually talk about this. He actually takes these articles, prints them, and mails them out, folks. Okay? This is as old school as you can get, but it works. He actually ended up opening the door because he talked about a trend that was, and by the way, it was AI related. And he did this 2.5 to 3 years ago, and he was able to open up the door with a CIO. That company, which is a household name, by the way, is now one of his top clients. Right? That's one example. A second example is a little more kind of fun, right? I know a person who basically found that one of his prospects runs just an amateur wine blog, his prospect is a director of IT, and she loves wine and kind of blogs about wine. He used that as a way to start dialogue. He didn't sell anything. All he did was exchange dialogue about wine. And then by getting connected and sharing information over time, guess what? When the opportunity was made available, he was the natural fit, the natural person to have a conversation with. So a few thoughts, right, for everyone here. Social and social listening, these are long plays. Yeah, they might open some doors, get you connected, you can have some conversations, all that rah-rah is there, it's all flashy, it's all lights, I get it. But there might not be a deal in the works. And that's okay. You've just got to be there with the information. Like you got to consider, and I've heard this, and I'm going to kind of repeat this from one of my students, but one of my students basically says, Amar, you've got to be the paper boy, right? And you've got to be the person that's just delivering the paper every single day to 100, 200, 300 people. Again, you can automate this process in the world of digital. It's significantly easier, but food for thought for you. All of this information is available. The question is, are you doing it?
Yep. Yeah, I think it's so important, and that's that consistency, that always on approach. You know, it's interesting, you talk about the mailing of the articles. I think that, you know, that's so powerful, but often I've seen people put a little sticky note, and we're going old school here, on an article with a little bit of an insight. That says why I think this article is important to you. If you translate that actually into the social space, making sure that when you are sharing this content, that you are including some context and some additional insight and value to why it's important to, you know, the individual or the audience that you're sharing it with. So
practice, Kim. That's the key, right? That's the difference.
Absolutely. So why don't we move forward into just a few more examples? I know you want to leave some time for some questions, but we've had some good ones as we go. You know, and you've already touched on these examples, but discovering new insights to increase engagement with your customers and buyers. It's not always going to be on the topics of business, and I think that's so important. I love this quote. I actually interviewed Carly for an article earlier this year. Really, really smart, engaging account executive. And she talked about, you know, LinkedIn is probably where I spend at least 50% of my day. So she's talking about social listening here on social networks, but not just for hunting, but researching, listening, and scanning what is going on with prospects, with her buyers. Did they get funding? You know, has their business changed? Is there some opportunity? Have they bought a company? Are they promoting their annual conference? What's going on? Or are they not sharing anything at all? Which, you know, understanding someone's approach to social and digital is also important. It's so telling what people are sharing. And I think that's a good segue into, understanding what your buyers are sharing. I've got a few examples here, building off some of the stories that you've already shared, Amar. I look up at the top, Miguel here. He's sharing information about attending a concert. Nothing to do with business, and he interchanged businesses and personal on Twitter. But what a great conversation starter on a phone call or via email, or even just a quick bit of social engagement to say, love that band too, or so many different ways to just continue to build relationships in a meaningful way. I love the example, Jeremy Burton, CMO at Dell. There's a couple of different examples here from what's important to both him and his organization, but also interspersing a bit of personal. And I love these two tweets side by side. One is very much about their business and their investment in their IoT division. Again, understanding their priorities. Or you look above and he's talking about the qualifiers for the World Cup and having a little bit of fun there. So again, an opportunity to engage in a different way. I bring up Blake Irving from GoDaddy. It's so clear when you look at his profiles, what's important to him, what he's talking about for his organization and individually. His commitment to gender diversity, talking about net neutrality, and even going beyond that, just understanding employees at an organization and what they're passionate about.
I wanted to share a quick story here, Kim. So just, and not to digress too much, but if anyone loves Coldplay here, I'm a huge fan. So I went to the Coldplay concert here in Toronto. It was August 21st, and because I'm doing social listening, I found actually one of our prospects in Toronto sat 2 rows ahead of me. Oh, I'm sorry. I sat 2 rows ahead of him. So the following day on his Instagram, I was immediately alerted because he was starting to post kind of videos and photos of the concert. And I just replied with my photo saying, beat you, I was 2 rows ahead, because I could clearly see that I was 2 rows ahead. So I mean, it just immediately opened up a nice, warm conversation. But, that could have been a signal that most of us would have missed. So I guess the case that I'm trying to make is, I know this is all common sense. Kim and I are talking about obvious things. And I guess maybe that's a segue into one of the biggest questions, Kim, and a bunch of people have asked this. So I've seen this question now about 5-6 times on the webinar today. I'm going to kind of paraphrase it in my own words, folks, if that's okay. And Kim, I'm going to field it to you, which is, this is really overwhelming, right? Yeah. Like, I know I have to do this. It's overwhelming. Where do I start? What exact tools should I be using just to start? And kind of, one gentleman basically used the term, quote, dip my toe in the water. How do we do that?
I think it's a great question. And I think, dipping your toe in the water, there are a lot of free tools available that you can use. I mean, even the basics within Twitter of building Twitter lists, and you can build them private. So you don't necessarily, if you're building a Twitter list on one of your key accounts or your prospects, you don't want everybody to see that. So you can build those privately and do some listening there. Twitter advanced searches that you can save are super simple tools that keeps you on top of important conversations. And even just basic web searches and Google Alerts. So there's a lot of free tools available. And I think, Amar, this is definitely an area of expertise you bring. But there are some more advanced tools that really can enable programs at scale. Because when you have each individual sales rep doing that, this it can take time. But they're definitely, and I'd love to have some conversations if folks are interested in chatting about that, that you can really do it at scale for that always on approach that really enables your team to be successful and focused in on what's important to you and your organization, but also at an account and a buyer level.
Totally agree. And folks, I would highly encourage you. Kim is an expert in this space. I'm going to toot her horn because she's too shy to do it, right? But reach out to Kim. Like, if you have questions on how to tactically enable this, like, reach out. She's an incredible resource for you, okay? And I want to add kind of my spice to this if I can. I'll say the following, that when it comes to social listening, and this is kind of like, this was my big aha moment, because it allowed me to really be a true salesperson and not just listen, but participate. But I will say this, folks, that social listening, yeah, it's about listening to your customers and prospects, but it's also being listened to. I hope you caught the nuance there, right? So yeah, it's about you listening, but it's also about others listening to you. I have a student and I want to share this success story. Now, I want to preface this carefully. Not all of you are going to feel comfortable doing this, but there are at least 15 to 20% of you on this line that will immediately kind of get light bulbs going off in your head when you hear this. So I have a student who basically does this. He works in a company with 800 competing salespeople, all right? He's in inside sales. And what he's doing is basically going out to his ideal customers. He sells to directors of IT, managers of IT, CTOs, etc. And what he does is he basically went to his CTO and director of IT customers and said, I want to ask you what's on your mind. And let's do a quick 5-minute video interview on a platform like this, GoToMeeting, GoToWebinar, whatever your poison of choice is. And he records that and he just put that interview up on YouTube. And then he just started to share that socially. So think about how powerful that is. He's now inducing other prospects to listen to him. And it's completely relevant because when he sends it to a prospect, he's not saying, listen to me. He's saying, listen to your peer at ABC company because they're talking about the challenges they have. And by the way, I happen to be the conduit that can help you overcome these challenges. He's never kind of explicitly saying that, but he's standing in the middle facilitating that conversation. Think about that. For some of you, that could be an incredible way to start getting listened to as well. So yeah, do social listening, but induce social listening by your prospects as well. Kim, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I absolutely think it's important, being aware. It goes back to building your brand and building your credibility and adding value. I think it's so important. People are listening to you as much as, you want to be listening to them. So.
For sure. Mike Porter's asking Amar, can you just repeat the list of some tools that you folks are talking about? Sure, Mike. So Mike and the rest of the gang here, some tools that you can kind of get hyper engaged on right away. Follow people on LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn, Mike. It's very simple. When you go to someone's profile, just to the top right of that, there's 3 dots. Click those 3 dots, opens up a menu. And from that menu, you're going to see an option that says follow. You don't have to physically connect with someone, Mike. All right. So another question coming in here from Larry is, Amar, do I actually need to connect with the person? No, you don't. And you don't need to visit their profile every day, folks. By just following someone on LinkedIn, you quickly enable, it's almost like being connected to them. So if you and I were connected physically on LinkedIn today, you would see all the stuff I share on your feed, but you don't have to connect to me. You can just follow me, right? So that's one way. Secondly, use Twitter. A lot of you basically said, I've disengaged on Twitter. I need to get back on. I'm not using Twitter. People really joke about Twitter, and it bothers me, to be honest, because yeah, don't use Twitter for engagement. Don't use Twitter for like messaging people if you're not comfortable. Some of you are not comfortable in 140 character, which is now more, by the way, messaging, and that's totally cool. But can you use Twitter for at least listening? Because that's what the core of this kind of webinar is about, right? So set up those lists. If you need help, reach out to me, reach out to my team. I will quickly show you how to do this in a heartbeat. But ultimately, you can use tools like Twitter to set up lists and very quickly determine how you can get the information you need. All right, Mike and team, I hope that helps. Kim, do you agree?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I want to jump in, being cognizant of time, just moving into, finding those sales-ready prospects across the web and social. So social listening can help you find absolutely ready, engaged, and ready to buy prospects. And there's a couple of examples here. I'm actually going to focus in on the one in the middle. Miguel Rodriguez, I'd actually showed him on Twitter, Director of Marketing Communications at MarkLogic. Miguel posted the other day saying he was looking for recommendations for video production companies for marketing videos. So he reached out to his network, which is very common. You're not always going to see that type of overt, buying signal, but they're there, and people who are active on social are putting things out there. Now, I was able to jump in and absolutely had a recommendation, and I jumped in quite directly and authentically, but it was because I had an existing relationship with Miguel, and I was able to say, I definitely have a recommendation. Do you have time to chat today? If I didn't know Miguel, if I hadn't already built a relationship with him through my own expertise and sharing insights regularly, he wouldn't have been open to that. We did have a phone call, very successful conversation in that context. But I think it's important to say the opportunities are out there, but they need to happen in an authentic way, in a way that you've already built that relationship. So jumping in, if you don't have that relationship, pitching your product, and we've done a little whiteout below, and I didn't know the individual, she may have already had a relationship, but jumping in and pitching your product right away, that goes back to the networking event. You don't want to be that person that is just jumping in if you don't have context, that type of thing. I actually had a lot of context for doing exactly what he was looking to accomplish through the videos. The other example I'll focus in on is on the left, and that's some listening around a conference hashtag. And here's, Dan Mearns and Christoph Trapp on our Scribble team participating in conversations at Content Marketing World, and talk about engaged buyers that are open to dialogue and looking for new insights, or people attending a conference. Following a conference hashtag, while one of these individuals was at the conference, the other wasn't, but he was referring people to go over and talk to the people who were there. So I think conference hashtags are a brilliant way to find some sales ready prospects and have authentic conversations. On a platform like Twitter, I think it's, people are open and looking to have dialogue. So it's another example. Looking at someone's activity on LinkedIn, you can get a sense of what's important to them, what they're sharing. So I use this example of Jeff. You can tell what he's researching and looking into, and the topics that are important to him and his role in marketing innovation at TD Bank. So just a few examples. Anything you would add there, Amar?
Yeah, sorry, I was just on mute fielding questions here in the background. But yeah, I love all these examples, right? The one that I love specifically the most, because I'm just biased to it a lot, is the conference hashtag, right? Yeah. If you're looking for ways to immediately get meetings and have conversations with people, but more importantly, start positioning yourself as an authority or as an expert. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is probably the most primed group of individuals that you're going to find. If you're selling into, and I'm going to use a cheesy example here, but if you're selling into technology, the technology department in a company, and there's a big conference around CTOs, and there's a room full of CTOs just kind of all going bananas over a hashtag on Twitter or Insta or whatever that could be, get involved in the conversation. You don't have to be overt about it, but add insights. Add insights. I actually try to put myself in the shoes of a learner, and I'm genuine about this. So I reach out to people when I follow on hashtags. I set up my streams, etc. And when all these kind of people are pouring in, I'm going to go out to them and say, you know what? It really sucks that I couldn't be there. What are you learning? What are the top 2 or 3 things you're learning at this conference that's game changing for you? And that immediately opens up a dialogue. Because think about it. When you get excited that you've just learned something new, what's one of the first things that you're looking to do? You're looking to tell the world. You're looking to tell people. You're going to go back to your office super energized and inspired and tell your team, hey, these are the top 2 or 3 things I learned. Maybe we should look into this. This creates dialogue, folks. Yep. It's just another opportunity to have conversations. And by the way, last time I checked, we in sales are not having enough, right? Yeah. So get involved in these conversations. These are easy ways to do it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, the conference one is one of my favorite, and you don't always have to be there.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. So just, reinforcing what we talked about at the very beginning, social listening really enables you to succeed with those new rules of engagement. I think it's more important than ever to be present, to be a part of the conversations. And, I think from a modern sales perspective, but also content marketing, and we're seeing, marketers overall, that alignment between sales and marketing, it works so importantly, like together, to be able to get those insights, to be able to engage, be more relevant, and have impactful conversations and engagement with buyers. So important to, build your expertise, stay on top of what's going on with your industry, within the verticals you're selling into, your key accounts, with your competitors, and with your buyers directly one-to-one. So important.
I love it. And kind of my parting words, folks, as we hit the top of the hour here, we're going to wrap up. Kim, we basically hit every single question. I'm glad we had a chance not to just take them at the end, but weave them into the overall conversation that we've had. But folks, my kind of big takeaways from today personally are the onion layered approach I mentioned, right? So again, your customer at the center, your customer, i.e. buyer at the center, then their company, then the kind of the industry around them, and then sitting on top of all of that are the thought leaders, the influencers, the analysts that are kind of the future, the futurists, right? So at what level are you going to kind of tap into? So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, what is your presence saying about you online? A lot of people, and I'm going to get really real with everybody here. I actually know some of the folks here, some of my students are on today. A lot of you folks have invested in Sales Navigator, and I love you for it. I think it's an awesome tool. But I want to remind you that that doesn't mean that your online presence looks less cheesy, right? I know a lot, and I'm going to be very real with everybody here. Just because you change your headline on LinkedIn to something snazzy doesn't mean you've got a buyer-centric profile. A lot of you actually still sound very salesy. I would highly, highly, highly discourage you and persuade you in the friendliest way possible to change that, because you're just harming yourself in the long run. We are now entering an era where more and more prospects are going to start hitting your profiles. They're going to start checking out who you are. They want to know what you look like. Yes, I know it's not popular, but it's true. They want to know what you look like. They want to know what city you're in. They want to see who your recommendations are. They want to see what you're saying about yourself, and what the words you're using actually matter.
Yeah.
So that's my kind of big outro. Kim, over to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just reinforce with what you've just said. It is social listening that's really going to bring your profile to life and really help you to find those opportunities to continue to build and demonstrate your expertise and find those new insights to be that much more relevant and really build those authentic relationships. And engage effectively with buyers. It is, the social and digital age is the reality, and social listening is a key part of that. So as Amar said, absolutely open to some offline conversations. I think we've probably officially gone over. Clearly, it's a topic we're both passionate about and really excited to share and have rich conversations with you folks.
I want to say one thing, and I want to ask a question. So if you're still on the line, hey, can you just let us know if you enjoyed today? Go to the question box, give us a quick yes or no. Did you find today's session valuable? Did this kind of open up some new possibilities for you, some new thought patterns, etc.? And the last thing I'll say is this, okay? Remember, social listening is about listening, but it's also about being listened to. Remember that earlier example I gave, all right? Dave's asking, Amar, what's your last name? Dave, my last name is Sheth, S-H-E-T-H. Look me up on LinkedIn. And folks, thanks again for being here. We're getting a ton of positive feedback, which I love. Thank you so much. I hope that this was insightful for you. And Kim, thank you again for your valuable time. Thanks, everyone. Have
my pleasure.
Wonderful day.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Cheers.